Viewed from above, water belongs to no one, only everything that lives. To protect water is to preserve life. However, more than 1 billion men and women on this planet don't have access to fresh water. Hello. We don't value water as long as we have some. That is why we're here in the Middle East, in a desert where water takes on its full meaning. Today I want to warn you about the threats against fresh water throughout the world. The fresh water that we waste at home without noticing it, because it's always on tap. Israel, Palestine, Jordan, 3 countries where freshwater issues are focused. It's the driest area on the globe, with 5% of the world population, with only 1% of the world's fresh water available. But our trip doesn't stop here.
Waste. We will see how in Las Vegas, water is used with total disregard. Even worse, it's brought in from far off at the risk of ruining thousands of farmers.
Where are my grandchildren going to go and my great-grandchildren? What are they going to do? Where are they going to get their water?
Rivers are under threat. The Jordan, which irrigates the Near East, has been drained of all its water. The result means that the Dead Sea is drying up and its level decreases by 1 meter every year.
La mer Morte disparaît parce qu'on a rompu un équilibre qui était millénaire.
In Mali, despite the lack of water, the Dogon people have become the leading producers of African red onions. How have they managed this? In France, a young woman, Christine Jean, has single-handedly prevented the building of dams which would have spoilt the Loire.
La seule solution, c'est de composer avec le fleuve, d'arrêter de vouloir le maîtriser définitivement.
In the Middle East, as elsewhere, underground water sources are being pumped without restraint. We're exhausting them to the point of extinction.
On est en plein désert, on dirait des marécages. Il y a un gâchis d'eau inouï.
In Brazil, we followed Daniel Mitterrand, who is fighting to protect a natural paradise where 2 rivers find their source. The water of the Minas Gerais must remain a place for all.
On ne vend pas la vie. Or l'eau, c'est la vie.
We are all responsible. We must save water today if we want there to be some left for tomorrow.
Did you know that only 0.3% of the world's fresh water is available to man? Yes, you heard, 0.3%. The rest is underground water and polar ice, which is unreachable. We are now in one of the driest and most stunning areas in the world, southeast Jordan.
Oh là 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 là, c'est magnifique. Regarde, c'est incroyable ce truc. Avec le soleil comme ça qui est en train de descendre. C'est ça qui est beau, voilà ce que je voulais faire. C'est ça que je voulais faire.
And there, in the middle of the desert, we discover a spectacle, an entire city cut into the rock. We're in Jordan, and this is Petra. Despite the lack of water, it's a city erected in the middle of the desert. Petra was a caravanserai, the biggest supermarket in the area. It housed close to 30,000 caravanners and traders of the incense trail. It was in the 1st century AD, and they were called Nabateans. When the Nabateans traded incense between Arabia and the Mediterranean, Petra used to be an important stop-off point. The city became deserted 2,000 years ago when camels were replaced by boats sailing round the desert. In Petra, it rains 9 days a year. To collect water, Nabateans created kilometers of channels and cisterns cut into the rock. And above all, the Nabateans used to have a real knowledge in saving water. In Petra, I meet up with a person whom I admire, Riccardo Petrella, an Italian economist who fights against the idea of water as merchandise. So Nabateans used to live with almost no water. Do you think we can learn from this?
Moi, je pense qu'on peut apprendre beaucoup de leçons. La première, c'est qu'un peuple peut vivre avec peu d'eau s'il fait un usage collectivement, un usage raisonnable, un usage parcimonieux et un usage également solidaire. Ça, c'est fondamental. Si on fait ça, je crois que le reste, ça va tout seul.
Is it true that people die every day because of unhealthy water?
C'est ça le scandale d'aujourd'hui. Le scandale de l'eau, c'est que malgré nous ayons la possibilité de permettre à tout le monde d'avoir accès à l'eau, eh bien il y a encore 4500 enfants qui meurent chaque jour à cause de maladies dues à l'absence d'eau potable et à l'absence de services sanitaires. Et moi, je trouve que c'est le scandale le plus significatif de notre société actuelle.
Fighting for the right to water is fighting for the right to live. That's why Riccardo campaigns on an international level to include rights to water into the Charter of Human Rights. But what gives us a hard time is the unequal distribution of water in the world.
Il y a à peu près 150 à 200 millions de personnes sur la surface terrestre qui ont effectivement ce problème par un fait objectif d'absence d'eau. Mais on constate que même dans les déserts les plus profonds, le riche a toujours accès à l'eau.
So it's always man's responsibility that's involved.
On arrive à dire que finalement la solution au problème, c'est votre pouvoir d'achat. Aujourd'hui, l'eau est devenue une marchandise. Et la vie doit être gratuite. Et l'eau qui est la vie, l'eau pour la vie, pas l'eau pour la douche, l'eau pour la piscine, l'eau pour la vie doit être l'expression de la gratuité de la vie.
Here in Petra, people lived intelligently in the middle of nowhere, and today our civilization is still trying to master the desert. In Las Vegas, in the richest country in the world, people spend lavishly. But how long will the capital of gambling survive? Las Vegas has cost billions of dollars and also billions of liters of drinking water just for a fantasy. But for how long?
We are in the Mojave Desert in the south of Nevada, the driest state in the United States. Here, the average rainfall is 200 millimeters of water per year, 3 times less than in Paris. Ever present, the sun maintains a burning heat. Against this background, we find one of the world's most impressive cities, Las Vegas. Night falls at last in the desert, and Vegas is revealed in all its extravagance. Despite the permanent drought, water is everywhere. The casinos continue outdoing each other with their excessive water displays. But then they can do just what they like. They bring in $6 billion a year. The result? Water consumption in Las Vegas is 2 times higher than the US average, over 1,000 liters per day per person, 4 times bigger than in France. Nothing seems able to quench Sin City's thirst. Patma Roy is the most powerful woman in Nevada. She's in charge of the water supply for Las Vegas and its region, cost what it may.
When I wake up in the morning, today has been taken care of. What I worry about is 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. That is of utmost concern to us, because when you live in the driest city in the United States, you can't wake up one morning and find out that there's no water.
The problem is that Las Vegas will soon be lacking water. The city has seen the most rapid growth in the US, a population of 1.5 million inhabitants, which should double in 10 years. a demographic explosion kept going by the 40 million visitors who make Las Vegas the top tourist destination in the US. For Pat Mulroy, nothing should hold back this extraordinary expansion, especially not the water problem.
We have the job to provide the resource no matter what they may envision. We can have input into terms of how that growth occurs, but we should not be dictating where it occurs, nor if it occurs.
Nobody worries about wasting the water. 3/4 of Las Vegas's water consumption is due to the gardens, parks, and the town's 50 golf courses. This only aggravates Las Vegas's biggest handicap, its dependency on Colorado for 88% of its water. The town's main water supply source is Lake Mead, an artificial lake, the biggest reservoir in the US. In all, 7 states in the west of America pump their water from Lake Mead, shared out according to an agreement taken several years ago, well before the prolonged drought which has hit the whole region. Today, Lake Mead has reached its limit. In 10 years, it has diminished by half.
The lake is dropping because the 7 states in the agreement are all pulling out the maximum amount of water that they can. So they're pulling out more water than is actually coming down the river, which is not what happened before. Sometimes business thinks they can change it to make it work their way, and good old Mother Nature comes back around most of the time. Southern Nevada gets a certain amount of water. They're allocated a certain amount of water to use. So even though the city grows, they still can only use so much water from Lake Mead, so the city has to look for other ways of finding water.
The only solution found by Las Vegas is to go and find water 500 kilometers away from the town in the east of Nevada. The authorities anticipate building a giant aqueduct to collect water from this magnificent valley. But for the leader opposing the aqueduct, Dave Tilford, the biodiversity of this region could be endangered.
This water is used by wildlife to come in and get drink of water, or by livestock from the ranchers that are in the area. And it produces this meadow out here where the wildlife, the deer and the elk and the antelope can come in and get feed. And this is the water that they're interested in, is the water that comes out of this aquifer that we don't know how much is there or how long it will last. These pipelines are going to be big enough that you could get into them and walk all the way to Las Vegas, standing up. That's how huge they are.
Well, the project will probably cost around $2 billion in today's dollars, which is a significant amount of money. Given the economic impact of that corridor and that tourist industry, it is worth every dime of that investment.
However, in Nevada, the water reserves have also suffered from the drought. Dean Baker and his 3 sons have managed the family ranch for more than 40 years, and he doesn't have enough water for his business.
It's been a number of years since there's been water in these troughs. They used to summer some cows around here, and they'd come here to drink, but we don't do that much anymore. But this is, for years, had water in, but it's been a number of years now since it's flowed. We can look in the well, and the water just goes down and down. Looks to me like it's about 15 feet down in there now. I'm crippled up enough that I'm not a very good mounter up.
Dean, along with the other ranchers, is worried about the fall in groundwater. The valley's 6,000 inhabitants are engaged in an unfair battle against the gambling kings.
So all of a sudden they realize that in order to sustain the growth that they want, so they can make more money. But my question is what happens when this water is gone? What happens? Do we come back in 5 years or 10 years or 50 years from now, and this is just a pipe sticking out of the ground? and all of these trees that have been here for hundreds and hundreds of years are dead and gone, you know, where is Las Vegas going to get their water then? And what are we going to do? If there's no water here, where are my grandchildren going to go and my great-grandchildren? What are they going to do? Where are they going to get their water?
Yes, they're scared. They're worried that their ranch livelihood will be destroyed, that the world that they know will be destroyed. And so they're walking very slowly, and they're throwing every concern on the table they can. They don't own that water.
Legally, Las Vegas has every right, to the extent of depriving this valley of all its water and destroying a whole part of American tradition. Reasonable consumption should be enough. But this is not the time for thinking. Water must be found fast before the tourists and the investors start to flee.
Las Vegas is a unique place. When people come to Las Vegas, they come here to experience virtual reality. People that visit Las Vegas don't want reality to ruin their weekend.
But one day, reality will finally catch up with Las Vegas.
Here is the antithesis of Las Vegas, Amman, Jordan, where water's lacking. An inhabitant of Amman consumes 15 times less water than an American, and this amount decreases yearly with the increase of the population. Amman, Beijing, Cairo, Mexico City. Did you know that we face a lack of water in half of our major cities in the world? And the most disturbing thing here is that 30 to 50% of water is wasted because of pipe leaks. Amman, Jordan's capital, had been built during the 20s. It used to be a village of 4,000 people, and now it's a big city with a population of 2 million people. Close to 50% of the country live here, without counting refugees from the war in Iraq, and they all have the same obsession: water. There is rationing. Each family has their tank, and in Amman, water is not distributed every day. In Amman, water has become an expensive product. Every day, 1,200 tank trucks cross the city to deliver water. Faucet or tap water only flows once a week in Amman. A Jordanian spends 10 times more money on water than a Frenchman.
بالنسبة لموضوع المي إنه يعني لما بدها تكون مرة بالأسبوع ولما حتى بدها تيجي لما بدها تيجي المي ما بتيجي مثلا إنه بدها تيجي يوم وثاني يوم بدها تضلها يومين ما في بتيجي بالليل لثاني يوم بالليل 9-10 لما تقطع ويكون الواحد يعني عنده عائلة وأطفال يعني موضوع مش سهل يعني.
How do you manage day by day? Tell me how you deal with this.
أول إشي بده يكون بالنسبة لموضوع الجلي. لموضوع الجلي إنه بالنسبة أول إشي بده يكون فتحة الحنفية شوي شوي الغسيل بده يكون في يوم واحد التنظيف الشطف كتير بده يكون في يوم واحد التعزير بده يكون طبعا في يوم واحد لأنه الصيف بده يصير الوضع كتير بده يختلف الأطفال هدول بده الواحد دوام يروح من الدوام بده ياخد حمام وضع الصيف بالذات أكتر من هيك بده تنظيف أكتر يعني بده يكب الواحد مي أكتر.
Is the water collected good to drink? Is it good quality?
أنا متهيألي إنه يعني اللي عندهم تنكات نظيفة ممكن إنهم يشربوا بس إحنا أول سبب أنا بقول يعني ممكن لأنه تنكاتي أنا صار لهم فترة إنه صدى طبعا ما بتقدر تنشرب من مرة فمضطرين كمان إنه نشرب المي نشتري شراء.
While this is happening, we French buy 6 million bottles of water a year because we don't trust tap water anymore. But either tap water or bottles, it's always been the same water which has flowed for 1 billion years, and this constant process is called the Great Water Cycle.
For fresh water, life starts in the oceans where 97% of the world's water is concentrated. Heated by the sun's rays, a fine film of water evaporates, leaving the salt in the sea. It then starts its long journey through the air in the form of steam, which condenses into clouds. When these tiny droplets which make up the clouds become big enough, they transform into rain or snow. Some of this water is imprisoned in glaciers. Today, they represent 2/3 of the fresh water which exist on the planet, a reserve we cannot access. The liquid water marks out its path towards the oceans. Over millions of years, its erosive strength has allowed it to form many contours, clearing a passage through the hardest of rock. Some of the water which flows on the Earth dives below the surface. If we exclude the glaciers, there is 100 times more fresh water under the ground than on the Earth. The Great Water Cycle, which seems to run so smoothly, unfortunately has a weak point. Water doesn't fall systematically at the same time, nor in the same places. In many parts of the world, water is lacking. In some parts, the climatic cycle alternates between seasons of heavy rain and dry seasons where it doesn't rain at all. The taps in the sky open and close suddenly. We call this the monsoon. In 1/4 of the year, 3/4 of the rain falls, a moment of rebirth for man and nature. Part of the fresh water present on Earth is unusable. Returned too quickly to the oceans, stored in the form of ice or too deep underground, it no longer participates in the water cycle. Like oil, water is not inexhaustible. So it's up to us to find the right solutions to stop water running through our fingers.
I'm flying over the Jordan Valley. It's always the same story. Here, water from the river has been diverted to irrigate fields and provide the towns. Result? The river flow has been divided 20 times, and only a small amount of water reaches the Dead Sea. Here we are, the world's most salty sea, but its level decreases 1 meter a year. Water from the Dead Sea is 10 times more salty than the ocean. These big white mushrooms that you can see here are the result of evaporation, leaving the crystallized salt behind. They are called evaporites. We're on the Israeli side of the Dead Sea. It's the lowest place on Earth, 412 meters below sea level. For 50 years, this sea has lost 30% of its surface area, and according to the experts, will disappear by the year 2050. Hi, Julie.
Bonjour.
Why is the Dead Sea disappearing?
La mer Morte disparaît parce qu'on a rompu un équilibre qui était millénaire. C'est-à-dire que chaque année, l'eau de la mer Morte disparaissait par évaporation, parce qu'il fait très chaud ici en été. Mais cette quantité perdue par évaporation était rendue à la mer Morte par le fleuve Jourdain, qui est son seul affluent. Depuis une cinquantaine d'années, Israël a détourné les sources du Jourdain et la Jordanie aussi, essentiellement pour développer l'irrigation à grande échelle. Donc le fleuve Jourdain n'est plus capable d'acheminer la quantité d'eau nécessaire pour remplacer l'eau perdue par évaporation. D'autre part, en aval, le phénomène d'évaporation est accéléré par deux compagnies qui littéralement traitent la mer Morte comme une mine et qui acheminent l'eau que nous voyons ici par un canal vers des bassins d'évaporation pour accélérer ce processus d'évaporation et récupérer les sels.
Salt collected from the sea contains a big amount of potassium, bromine and magnesium. These raw materials are in much demand in the chemical industry and massively exploited by Israel and Jordan. But all these changes threaten species who have adapted to these extreme conditions and are unique on Earth. Is it important to save the Dead Sea, and what for?
Si vous considérez que c'est un écosystème unique au monde, parce qu'elle a beau être morte, on a un écosystème qui en dépend. Si vous considérez que la disparition de la mer Morte entraîne des affaissements de terrain assez catastrophiques sur ces rives, on voit beaucoup de bonnes raisons d'essayer de sauver la mer Morte. Par contre, sauver la mer Morte n'a pas d'intérêt si on la considère simplement comme une ressource minière. Du moment qu'on a terminé d'exploiter la mine, on ferme la mine et on va exploiter autre chose.
Look how funny it looks. There's so much salt in the Dead Sea that you can float without having to learn to swim. I've seen tourists swimming in the sea, but at the same time I've heard that it was very polluted, so I don't really understand.
C'est que depuis le développement de l'irrigation et de l'agriculture à échelle industrielle dans la vallée de la mer Morte, on a évidemment les ruissellements des eaux agricoles usées vers le fleuve Jourdain, qui sont les seules eaux qui finalement maintenant sont acheminées encore vers la mer Morte. Elles sont évidemment très chargées en insecticides, en pesticides, en engrais, et il n'y a pas d'évacuation possible, puisqu'ici c'est le terminus.
Alors, il y a un grand projet.
So there's a project about building a canal which would go from here to the Red Sea to bring the water right here. What do you think about that?
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de ce projet? Alors, c'est un projet en même temps.
It's quite a good idea in that Palestinians, Israelis and Jordanians would be working together.
Les Palestiniens, les Jordaniens vont travailler ensemble.
Oui, ils travailleraient ensemble pour acheminer l'eau de la mer Rouge à la mer Morte, qui n'a pas du tout la même concentration en sel. Ça changerait l'écosystème de manière irrémédiable et pour toujours. Ça ne sauverait la mer Morte que dans le sens où on remplirait un trou d'eau. C'est tout, comme vous remplissez votre piscine.
How will the water issue be resolved?
La seule solution serait d'accepter de vivre avec notre planète, d'accepter que la ressource n'est pas infinie et qu'on ne pourra pas simplement faire grandir éternellement les quantités d'eau qu'on veut allouer à l'agriculture ou à l'industrie ou à la consommation domestique. Accepter les limites de notre planète.
Julie is completely right. Today, vast lakes are almost dried out. I can remember when I took pictures of Lake Chad. Look what happened. It has lost 95% of its surface area within 40 years. Who's guilty? Dryness, dams, and irrigation. Where we could see a small sea is now a small lake surrounded by swamps. For the Aral Sea in Central Asia, it's the same story, but even worse. The sea was as big as the Netherlands and Belgium put together. The two rivers which used to flow into the sea have been diverted to irrigate cotton plantations. Result, the Aral Sea has almost disappeared. I took some surreal photos of these fishing boats abandoned in the desert. Added to this, the dust carried in the wind has contaminated lands for hundreds of kilometers around. Today, this disaster affects millions of people. Sustainable development is without doubt the solution in preserving our ecological heritage for tomorrow. There is a woman in France. She is well known as militant concerning rivers. Here is the incredible story of Christine Jean, activist for the River Loire and who contributed in saving our most beautiful river.
It's the longest river in France, a natural waterway 1,000 kilometers long, which covers a fifth of the country. The worldwide renown of the Loire Valley is due mainly to its chateaux. Chemonceau, Chambord, Chaumont are all architectural jewels of the Renaissance. From its source in the Gerbier des Joncs mountain to its estuary in the Atlantic, the Loire is also a natural preserve of ecological wealth. Wading birds such as the egret and the heron can be seen, also beavers and otters, and salmon swim upriver to breed. However, since 1950, 80% of European rivers have been equipped with dams, which disrupt the river system and prevent the groundwater from replenishing. These dams impoverish the natural habitats, and many animal species are disappearing. If the Loire has remained one of the least damaged rivers in Europe, it is thanks to this woman's struggle. Christine Jean has crusaded for 20 years to keep the river wild.
Tous autant que nous avons encore besoin de poser nos yeux sur des espaces qui nous paraissent pas totalement maîtrisés par nous, parce que c'est là qu'on peut commencer à rêver, on peut commencer à imaginer des choses, et ces espaces se font extrêmement rares. Pour moi, la Loire, c'est une lumière qui résulte de cette coexistence du ciel, de l'eau, du sable, de la végétation.
Christine comes from Nantes and spent all her childhood on the banks of the Loire, which explains in part her ardent desire to protect the river from any development that could spoil it.
J'avais quand même un attachement extrêmement fort à cette nature, peut-être parce que je me souvenais de promenade avec mon père où on allait cueillir les jonquilles, c'était extrêmement sympa, et tout ça, petit à petit, ça disparaissait.
Christine Jean started her fight here in the Auvergne, in the gorges of the Serre de la Phare. A dam construction project threatened to destroy one of the last wild valleys of the Loire, whose ecosystem was still intact. "17 years later, Christine Jean is proud of the battle she led against the construction which should have taken place here. Thanks to her, this wild river has not yet been completely tamed.
L'eau serait montée à 80 mètres au-dessus, là, du niveau actuel, à peu près. Ou alors à moins que ce soit à la hauteur du mur, mais enfin c'est dans ces environs-là, donc on aurait eu besoin d'un gros tuba. Aujourd'hui, je crois que personne ne regrette. Sans rire, c'est à chaque fois émouvant de revenir là et de se dire c'est un peu grâce à tout le monde. C'est-à-dire qu'on ne serait pas bougé. Aujourd'hui, il n'y aurait plus ça.
From 1989, ecologists occupied the dam's future building site for 5 years. The demonstrations increased. Christine Jean was in charge of coordinating the anti-dam movement. This attractive, committed woman from Brittany attracted the media's interest. At barely 30 years old, she became the standard bearer of the Loire's cause.
Quelques amoureux de la nature décident de dire non. Union sacrée contre les barrages, on s'unit tous les protecteurs de la nature du bassin de la Loire pour faire échec à ce projet. Donc il est évident que c'était la bataille de David contre Goliath, du pot de terre contre le pot de fer.
La Loire dans son lit, l'eau c'est la vie. La Loire dans son lit, l'eau c'est la vie.
Those defending the dam construction projects have accused the ecologists of fighting a rearguard battle. It's not about refusing all development, but hindering the flow of water in the riverbed means disrupting the balance of the whole valley, from the source to the estuary.
La seule solution, c'est de composer avec le fleuve, d'arrêter de vouloir le maîtriser définitivement, mais de composer avec la nature.
In 1994, 5 years after the start of the action, the French government backed down and the Serre de la Phare dam project was cancelled and others followed.
Moi, j'étais en vacances en famille en Écosse. Et là, je téléphone pour savoir ce qu'il en est de la décision du gouvernement et j'apprends qu'il y a abandon du barrage de Serre de la Fare. Donc ça, c'était vraiment un souvenir très très fort, mais il y en a plein.
Understandable when you know that the dams endanger the riverbeds, holding back alluvial deposits full of heavy metals. This resounding victory even resulted in the destruction of work already in operation.
Tout d'un coup, on a une bascule. Ce qui n'était pas possible devient possible. Ce qui n'était pas possible parce que c'était culturellement, mais comme on dit, iconoclaste de faire sauter un barrage, ça devient possible parce qu'on a mis un autre discours derrière. On n'est pas contre le barrage, on est pour le saumon. On est pour la préservation des poissons migrateurs et qui peut être contre la préservation des poissons migrateurs.
This is how Christine Jean won the support of the fishermen eager to save the great wild salmon. Today they are starting to come back to the Loire. This man is pursuing the same goal, Martin Arnoux, Christine Jean's disciple. His battle is to bring the great Atlantic salmon back to the Loire's main tributary, the Allier River. This also means dismantling a dam, the Poutès Dam.
Tout le monde sait que le barrage de Poutès est au cœur des meilleures frayères, que c'est le seul grand barrage sur l'Allier. Tout le monde commence à intégrer la valeur du poisson, la valeur de cette rivière. Donc il n'y a pas de raison que dans le prolongement du combat de l'or vivante, on n'efface pas dans les années qui viennent le barrage de Poutès.
The concession granted to the EDF will end in 2007. The company has asked for a 40-year extension. Now is the time to act.
Maintenant, le barrage est toujours là, donc notre mobilisation, évidemment, reste très forte pour franchir les derniers mètres afin que tout le monde comprenne, que la société comprenne que c'est un ouvrage du passé et que maintenant l'avenir, c'est l'enlever.
The region already has a windmill park. 10 would be enough to replace the dam's electricity production. The logical follow-up to this battle of wills started 20 years ago by Christine Jean and the Loire conservationists. In 1992, Christine was awarded international recognition for her battle, the Goldman Prize, the environmental equivalent of a Nobel. But Christine has forgotten the glamour already and gone back to the fight. The Loire is not only a success for her, but for all those who have fought for respect for the environment and nature. At the time, they weren't so many.
C'est vrai que c'est parfois un peu drôle de voir comment, aussi peu nombreux, nous avons pu être perçus comme étant extrêmement puissants. Et là, ça interpelle quand même. Mais en même temps, c'est bien, parce que je crois que nous étions puissants. Nous étions certainement puissants parce que nous allions dans le sens de l'histoire. Il y a eu ma passion pour la nature, il y a eu cet objet Loire qui était quand même un objet magnifique. Et puis, il y a eu aussi ce combat pour la nature et ce combat pour la démocratie. Parce que tout d'un coup, on apprend que, ma foi, la démocratie, ça s'use quand on s'en sert pas.
All the same, Christine won't let her guard down. Today, she's hoping to influence decisions concerning the Saint-Nazaire port development in the Loire estuary. This extension threatens the marshes and mudflats, essential feeding grounds for fish and birds. They must not be destroyed or polluted. The aim is to limit port expansion without reproducing past mistakes, so that the Loire may remain a free and living river.
We're flying over the Jordan Desert. The definition of a desert is an area where not more than 250 millimeters of rain falls per year. As the weather is really hot, the rainwater evaporates. 41% of the earth is desert or semi-desert. It's difficult to imagine, but more than 2 million people live in areas where water is lacking, a third of humanity. Here I am in one of the most beautiful deserts of the world. We are in Wadi Rum, South Jordan, which means high mountain. Here, 400 million years ago, there used to be a sea, and all these mountains here have been shaped by sand erosion. In fact, the Wadi Rum desert is not deserted. 6,000 people live here, counting 2,000 Bedouins. Bedouins are nomads with livestock. They continually move to find pastures for their herds. In this part of the Arabian desert, people still live in tents, moving from watering hole to watering hole.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام بيان. كيف حالك؟ تمام
تمام تمام.
When you find a water pond in the mountains, how do you know if you can drink it or not? That there's no health risks for your children or yourself?
المي طبعا بتكون في جبل وعر وبعدين الجبل يعني يكون جبل يعني جلب صلب والمية بتيجي من السماء عليه ترانزيت بيكون نظيف لا وحش ولا بيجيهاش وحوش يعني ما كان النجوم تشرب منها أو الطير بس.
What's the quality of water like in the desert? Has the quality changed or is it still the same?
لا ما مية السماء ومية العد بتقارب لبعض كلها بتكون صافية. مية المطر ومية العد لأنه بيكون المجمع يوم يكون المجمع عتب على المجمع اللي بتكون فيه المية. المجمع إذا بيكون نظيف لأنه تلويث في الأرضية الحمد لله ما فيه.
Are there water springs which belong to certain families or is it shared by everyone?
لا الكل اللي بيرد بيشرب مية منه. اللي بيرد بيشرب ما في لا واحد عن واحد. الكل بيشرب منه. هو معروف لعائلة معروفة يعني اللي حجروه اللي هم الغوانمة وحفروا فيه بيارة وطلعت ميتهم وكذا بس ما بيبنوا على الناس اللي بيرد بيشرب.
Is there a message that you would give us Westerners who waste so much water?
والله أنا عندي حاليا في رم يعني عندي في رم يمكن تقريب 4 دشوش مش 1 ولا 2 4 يعني في دش للضيافة وفي دش للعائلة وفي دش وبس يبتل جسمي بعطيه شوية صابون وبجرد بهالليفة وبفتح الدش يعني أقل من دقيقة يعني ولو إنها ببلاش لازم تتصل فيها.
In the desert, the environment imposes a certain lifestyle. You have to stick together, to save and share water. It's a rule for Bedouins to give hospitality. They greet you in their tent, you are offered a cup of tea, and you share the meal. It's crazy how a desert can contain so many plants and animals. A new world wakes up at the first drop of water or morning dew. This struggle for life without water is stunning.
Life without water seems impossible. However, millions of species populate barren land. These barren lands, each quite different, all have the same name, the desert. In these regions, rain is a rare phenomenon and the air is very dry. The temperature can climb to 50 degrees. How to live with so little water? Above all, you must harvest as much as possible. For the plants, their only chance to trap moisture is at dawn from the dew. A godsend, which most living beings make the most of. Using a more efficient technique, others collect the water brought by the mist. It gradually condenses along the body and slips directly into the mouth. For the rest of the day, when the sun is at its zenith, the aim is not to find water, but to lose the minimum. Colour plays a huge role. Lighter shades reflect the sun's rays and lower the skin's temperature. Trees use the same strategy, but they have another advantage in case of extreme drought. By sacrificing a branch, they reduce their need for water and ensure survival. Most plants have limited the number and size of their leaves to save the precious liquid. Moreover, they have developed a phenomenal capacity for storage. These cacti can hold hundreds of litres of water in reserve. Accumulating moisture whilst limiting waste to a minimum is vital. The luckiest ones are surprisingly adaptable. With a flattened body, it's possible to be only half exposed to the sun's rays. Sheltered, the other half cools down rapidly. When the temperature of the ground is at 70 degrees, you need to minimize contact with the burning sand. Lifting each pore in turn allows instant cooling. Fortunately, sand is a very poor heat conductor. If you're a great contortionist, the simplest method is to make a shelter. Just burying into the sand protects from the sun. And life can start again when the sun disappears. Some plants take advantage of the respite to open up their flowers at nightfall. After a day spent sheltering, life comes back to the surface. For the predators, it's feeding time and the chance to collect the water in their prey. Life in the desert today is precarious, holding on by the finest thread. Should the drought intensify, it will disappear.
The desert is not always immutable. Here in the Negev, in southern Israel, the forest is growing. Is that the Yatir forest? Olive trees, cypresses, pines, pistachios. This forest in the middle of the Negev is the dream of one man, David Ben-Gurion, one of the founders of Israel. Here, 4 million trees stop the desert. Villages are born, and man is cultivating the place. This forest is entirely man-made. The first tree had been planted in 1963. Today, the Yatir forest covers 3,000 hectares. It's the biggest one in the country, and it's just over 40 years old. Continuing the fight against desertification, the Negev population will increase by 50% within the next 10 years, with new immigration from Eastern Europe. But elsewhere in the world, due to the dryness and bad exploitation of the soil, close to 600 million hectares, around 11 times the size of France, are becoming deserts. In Israel, agronomists have actually created and improved desert agriculture. We're in Keturah, in Israel. Here is an incredible woman that I want to introduce you to. Her name is Elaine Soloway. She heads an amazing research program in this experimental kibbutz, surrounded by a magnificent palm grove. But I won't say any more. Hi, Elaine.
Hello.
What kind of tree are you planting?
I'm planting a tree called Balanitis aegypticus. This is a tree that is indigenous to this desert and uses very little water. It uses about 10 cubic meters of water per tree per year.
Why is planting trees so important?
Actually, the only way to revive an area which is suffering desertification is to plant trees, to allow the other plants and the other animals and the insects and birds to return. The trees underpin the ecosystem. They're the most important element. Trees are a cure for many of our environmental problems. They're not only the lungs of the world, they're the world's air conditioners. They cool the ground, they allow the rain to return, because cold air rising means that the clouds don't blow over, that they begin to drop the rain. Trees also stabilize ground that's eroding away. They stop sandstorms. Trees can be planted in protective belts around cities and villages and farms. They store carbon. They can help counteract the effects of global warming just by doing that. If 1/3 of the planet's surface would be forest, a good proportion, I would think that a lot of our problems would be lessened and perhaps even disappear.
Can we say that all deserts can be replanted?
I think we can return it perhaps to what it was. Whether or not we can tackle the Sahara and turn it into a forest that's beyond our power. And perhaps it shouldn't be done because deserts belong on the world too, the way other ecosystems do.
Elaine Soloway has brought many plants from all around the world to test their resistance to dryness and salt. Here, water pumped from the ground is brackish, in other words, salty. Of the 800 million people who are victims of starvation in the world, most of them live in the dry belt. It's by improving desert agriculture that Elaine Soloway contributes in the fight against starvation.
This is the yellow pitaya. It's from a cactus, one that uses very little water. And it's an excellent fruit and very good for people.
It's delicious.
The water equation is very good on this, and it's a favorite among people who try it.
It's full of water. It's unbelievable.
If we find better ways to use less water and use less energy to fit better into natural areas, then I think it will be better for our children and our grandchildren. And that's one of the reasons why I'm determined here in this little country with such a small amount of arable land and such small water resources. I believe I can design a better sort of perennial agriculture that won't do damage and that will give us everything that we need to live well.
Elsewhere in the world, people can still live without wasting water. In Mali, it almost never rains. Over there, the Dogon people, even without water, are the biggest onion producers in Africa.
A baking sun exerts its unyielding power 800 kilometers from Bamako in the heart of Mali, on the frontier of the scorching Sahel. An immense sandstone plateau, where not a trickle of water can be found, ends at the 200-kilometre-long Bandiagara cliffs. This is Dogon country. Between the plain and the plateau, water is so rare it creates perpetual anxiety. For generations, women have accepted to confront this hostile territory full of dramatic cracks. But how do they manage without water? Perched on a cliff, the village of Duru has 350 inhabitants. Drought, wind, sand, and barely any rain make the Dogon people heroic farmers. Strangely, the onion is the speciality of the Dogons. Traditional farming requires a lot of water. Maintaining these gardens is a real challenge, demanding military discipline controlled by Amadou, the water chief. He does the rations, and he has a sharp eye. $50 gourds per family per day. These are the water warden's orders, which must be obeyed. A dying pond, all that is left from the last rains to water the gardens. You can see the worry on Amadou's face.
Je suis inquiet et que vraiment il ne pleut pas beaucoup et que c'est la seule eau. Vraiment, quand on prend beaucoup, on risquerait à 3 mois de ne plus avoir de l'eau.
Every villager here lives on farming and the onion harvest. Each family has his plot of land. Despite the impossible conditions, they produce several thousand tons of onions per year. By severely rationing the water, the country's most important source of income is maintained. Despite the village elders' petitions, there are not many clouds over Dogon country. 60 days of rain a year, one of the lowest rainfall counts in the world. Knowing how to manage the water, avoiding waste, is all part of survival. Every square metre is conceived to retain maximum moisture. Coming out of this arid earth, the onions demand months of effort and deprivation. Although the gardens appear fresh, it's impossible to forget the burning hell which surrounds the land farmed by the Dogons. Thanks to their superhuman efforts, the Dogons have become the leading producers of African red onions. Out of the rocks fallen from the cliff, the women extract banko, earth mixed with straw and manure to help cultivation. Market day in Duru. Caddy comes once a week to sell the onions she's grown with her husband. The women are in charge of bargaining. Chattering and haggling, they animate the market. Buying, selling, swapping. The wholesalers take away several tons of onions at a time. Heavy bundles are carried off to the capital, Bamako, where they are distributed throughout the whole African continent. Amadou is not the only Dogon's much-feared water warden. When he's not rationing, he's working out new strategies to manage the water better. The farmers elected him for this 5 years ago. He also proudly watches over the progress of the dam, which could change everything. 200 dams like this have been built throughout Mali to help the complicated work of the farmers. And it was a Frenchman, ethnologist Marcel Griol, still well remembered here, who built the first dam. In 1930, he undertook the adventurous crossing of all Western Africa, ending up in Dogon country. He studied the rituals and traditions of these brave people trying to conquer nature. A forerunner of sustainable development, he knew that a dam would help the Dogon people to pursue their vital onion farming. Basically, nothing has changed on the Bandiagara cliffs since Marcel Griol. The same rituals, the same working of the land, the same onions. And the ever-increasing fear that one day they will lack the sacred water without which there is no future. Drought is ever more oppressive, and every year the desert comes closer. Discovering a new source makes you a new man, powerful and envied. Rumours are spreading throughout the village. Musa, a farmer, has just found water amidst the rocks. Amadou, incredulous but curious, goes to the site. Musa did well to listen to the sorcerer who advised him to dig here. He dug and dug until a trickle of groundwater came to light, 5 meters from the Earth's surface.
hal kepal kuni kana wa kepal nungo yi nyanko nu ne nana bo ya kepal gidi nungo nu oji nungo yeti mo ma bere ku sam mo yugo nang ni sew yi o tenyo emwe yugo nang ni sew ye nya yo dam pu jawai sew e liwa yiko e gurowe ama kunu na men taka.
Musa's courage has paid off. The wells belong to him. He will be able to water his plants and still provide for his family. He's counting his luck because although he's tried many times, it's still rare water comes to reward the farmer's efforts. It's now been 10 months since a drop of water has fallen in Duru. The situation is serious. Amadou knows this and has gathered all the village wise men together for discussion under the great Tuguna. They talk endlessly, sitting under a roof 1.20 meters high. Impossible to argue without banging your head on the ceiling. For Amadou, as for all the Dogons, only the spirits, those intangible, unpredictable, but basically benevolent beings, can bring water. Throughout the village, there are signs of reverence to Nomu, the god of water and master of life. In the recess of every door, in every hole in the stone, there's a mask or statuette bringing hope to the people who work as hard as they pray, so they may soon see the trickle of a little water.
There is always one figure which stuns when we talk about water. 70% of fresh water used throughout the globe is used for irrigation of agricultural land. But sometimes we waste this water. See for yourself. In the middle of the desert of the Wadi Rum in Jordan, irrigation canals which occupy the width of the valley over hundreds of hectares. What's this all about? All this irrigation. Incredible. All made in the desert. It's crazy.
En plein désert, une construction pareille.
It looks like a French-style garden with those borders and alleys. You see that house over there?
What do you think when you look at that? Do you think it's good to do that or not?
I think that human can do anything.
They tell me that this folly is owned by a royal family from the Middle East. Ricardo Petrella was right. The rich man never runs out of water. I cannot stop thinking about the fact that French people also act like rich people, billionaires. Only with them, it's with food. A French person uses 4,000 liters of water a day. For a basic steak, taking into consideration the water used to irrigate the corn eaten by the beast, it will have taken 2,000 liters of water before it reaches my plate. Another example, my cotton t-shirt. From the cotton fields to the factory costs 7,000 liters of water. For our electricity, it takes 400 liters a day for each French man and woman. For what we use daily, it's a huge amount of water. That is what we call virtual water, but this water is unfortunately real. It's crazy how much water there is around. Look, we're in the middle of the desert, and it looks like marshland, an unbelievable waste of water. It's important to remember, we're in the middle of the desert. There are no rivers nor lakes, so where's the water coming from to cultivate these huge areas? The water which irrigates all this cultivation is under my feet. It is a nappe phreatic layer. Unfortunately, this layer doesn't have enough time to regenerate because it's fossil water. Man is wasting within 10 years what took millions of years to create. But do the Jordanians have much choice? They're lacking water and already import 97% of their cereals. The nappe phreatic layers being wasted here, elsewhere, are being polluted. And it's especially true in Gaza, Palestine, where the conflict with Israel diminishes the quality of fresh water.
Gaza, a small strip of narrow land in the southwest of Israel. With more than 3,200 inhabitants per square kilometre, it has one of the densest populations in the world. Pumped from polluted groundwater, 90% of the tap water is unsuitable for consumption. A catastrophe which is responsible for hundreds of deaths each year. Dr. Younis Moguer delivers the results of the analysis.
The disease could be direct from the surface water, is a cholera, is a typhoid, which is as a result of the nitrate increment in the groundwater.
Taking into account the increase in population, Gaza can no longer manage to treat its wastewater. This is what we found 2 kilometres from the town centre. This is where the sewage from the town's northern neighbourhoods is dumped. Only 1/3 of the wastewater discharged into the water purification plant is treated.
We can see here is the suspended solid, which is originally part of the pollution inside the wastewater. After treatment, it's going to that very big lake, and that water in that lake infiltrate naturally to the groundwater and increase the pollution, the chemicals such as the nitrate in the groundwater.
This pollution has a direct effect on health. Yusuf, Maja and their 2 children live in the very poor neighbourhood of the Canyoons.
مش المية هذه يعني الله يعني والله يمدوها البهايم اللي هي البهايم ما بتشربها. يعني صابرين ما فيش فيدنا حاجة نسوي عليهم. ليش بدنا نعمل لنا حاجة عشان قصة المية؟ ريحنا راسنا على قصة ايش الفلتر وكنا على التحلية. ندب قلان ونيجي. أما قصة المية والله مستحيل يعني بنستخدمها صرنا الحين لمدة بس غسيل. نغسل ايدينا نغسل أواعينا هذا بس قصة المية.
A few weeks ago, little Marwan had a kidney operation. His crying and sleepless nights alerted his parents. But Marwan is still not completely healed. Today, he has an appointment for new kidney x-rays. Dr. Albata will have to operate a second time.
But he have now pain in left kidney. وهنا في الجاه هنا كمان في حصوة تحت هنا. حصوتين كبار طبعا في داخل الكلية. نعم. هذول طبعا بينزلوش إلا إيش حصاوي صلبة هذه.
These kidney stones are due to dehydration and the level of salt in Gaza's water supply. A whole generation of young Palestinians are threatened. In addition, the overexploited groundwater is being invaded by seawater, and the tap water comes directly from there. Too high in salt, it causes major kidney failure. Many decontamination plans have been thought up by the Palestinian authorities, but every time work stumbles due to conflict with Israel. The solution requires the building of new infrastructures.
This project is funded by USAID, and the project consists of a national carrier, and the carrier transmit the water from the desalination plant, which will be constructed inside Gaza Strip, not outside from Gaza Strip.
The desalination plant the Palestinians dream of does exist, but in Israel, in Ashkelon, a few kilometers north of the Gaza Strip. It is capable of supplying hundreds of millions of cubic meters of water per year. 1 Israeli out of 7 consumes water from this plant. Even if this technology is greedy in energy, every year it consumes 75 million litres of oil. It remains the only foreseeable solution for Gaza. Some of this water, about 5 million cubic meters, goes every year to Gaza for humanitarian reasons. It is totally insufficient because the real needs are 10 times higher. Even with the resumption of international aid, more than €1 billion are needed to resolve the drinking water problem in this small part of the world.
On Earth, 1 person out of 5 doesn't have access to healthy water. I would like to remind you that in France, 2/3 of our rivers and groundwater are polluted. But we do have the means to make it drinkable. We are in Wadi Fukin, on the West Bank. This village fascinates me. It was created 300 years ago by two families who negotiated the sharing of water and lands. 300 years later, there are 1,200 inhabitants who are still doing the same thing. This system has worked for 3 centuries. Today, this Palestinian village is threatened by an Israeli development which surrounds it. The buildings and tar roads prevents water infiltration and the replenishment of the spring. But there's worse. These newcomers eject their used water into the cultivated valley.
Look around you, you can see over there the massive development of new building. This new building is part of expansion of a Jewish settlement in the West Bank named Beitar Elit. And the expansion of this settlement and massive development in the small watershed cover the area with road, parking lots, and sealed surfaces that prevents the water to reach the spring.
But why, as an Israeli, are you protecting the interests of this village?
First of all, I'm neighbor to these people, and I'm a professional hydrologist. So therefore, I felt that I have the option to make a change and help these people in their struggle. But beside of that, I think it's a human being contact. We all care to each other. We're all living in the same land and in the same region. And I don't see there is a way that in one hand you got people that have no power, neglecting of any kind of hold on their future. I feel that only by personal struggle and only by personal contact between people we can make change and influence the decision maker and the processes here.
A simple conflict of interests? Maybe. But think about the problem on a different scale, which brings countries into conflict, not only villages. And you have the recipe for a possible war for water. But with some effort, we can avoid it.
Hi, Abu Mazen.
Alan. Bonjour, monsieur.
This is Abu Mazen, my friend, community leader, and a respectable farmer of Wadi Fukin village.
Is there still the same amount of water, or is the water decreasing? Is there less, or the same as it was before?
طبعا نقصت المياه بسبب سبب واضح. المياه نقصت بسبب واضح انه اليهود حوالينا بفجروا التفجيرات بيسووا تفجيرات في الجبال وبيبنوا على رؤوس الجبال وبالتالي المياه.
Could selling your products to the colony be a solution?
احنا بنزرع الكسى، بنزرع خيار، بندوره، باذنجان، فلفل، كرع، في خيار مثلا، يقطين، العنب بنزرعه كمان، شجرة العنب، نزرع كل الخضرة هذه بالإضافة كمان لأشجار بنزرع، احنا كمان نزرع أشجار. هلا بالنسبة للبيع مع المستوطنين احنا ما بنبيع مع المستوطنين ولا بنتعامل ولا بأي شكل من الأشكال معهم.
What do you think about Leo's work around here?
ممتاز. يعني قدم كل ومير لخا تدربا أتى كل حفريم شلخا بتدربا تدربا.
But the solution seems simple. If Israelis buy fruit and vegetables from the Palestinians, it would stop the pollution. As always, we don't share enough. Sharing water teaches you how to live together, and this fight is also the fight of a woman I admire, Danielle Mitterrand. We follow her to an amazing place in Brazil, Minas Gerais. It's a natural paradise, the source of 2 rivers, and she wants to protect it from covetous eyes.
Here, water spurts up from the ground, and along its way, this water nourishes the most populated regions of Brazil. More than 60 million inhabitants depend upon it. For the Brazilians, these water sources are a treasure to be protected. They call them Brazil's Water Tower. For 20 years, Danielle Mitterrand, as the head of her foundation, has been defending the rights of oppressed people. A commitment which today she considers to be useless if man has no access to water. At 82 years old, she's putting a lot of effort into this new fight.
Je suis plus très jeune, je continue à agir. Et quelquefois c'est difficile, c'est dur pour moi, physiquement. Mais je le fais, vous savez, pour rire souvent je dis, il faut pédaler. Si on ne pédale pas, le vélo tombe. Eh bien, aussi longtemps que je pourrai maîtriser mes fatigues et aller de l'avant, je le ferai.
She intervened as a matter of urgency. 2 multinationals wanted to bottle this water. Further south, a similar project has almost entirely dried up the groundwater. Danielle Mitterrand alerted UNESCO. They listened to her and classified this region as a biosphere reserve, which prevents any marketing.
Quand on dit aujourd'hui l'eau est une marchandise, nous on dit non, l'eau n'est pas une marchandise. C'est une partie intégrante de notre propre corps, de l'existence de la Terre. On ne vend pas la vie. Or, l'eau, c'est la vie.
This water will not be bottled, but another danger looms. A danger linked to the Earth's resources. Here, minerals abound which enrich the water. A phenomenon strengthened by the region's incredible biodiversity, and which gives the water an exceptional quality when it comes out of the mountain, filtered by the rocks. But this land, so rich in minerals, is also rich in ore. This has always been Brazil's main mining region. This is where we find one of the biggest iron mines in the world, also one of the most polluting. The main danger for all the waters of the region.
J'ai la sensation de me trouver devant une plaie ouverte qu'on inflige à la terre. Là, on a l'impression d'être dans une espèce de furoncle malsain, cancéreux, qui sournoisement pollue tout l'environnement de cette région.
An open wound, but also the main economy of the Minas Gerais. For 70 years, the town of Itabira has grown alongside the mine. When the iron ore is extracted, the waste is discharged in the form of mud full of heavy metals, which infiltrate the groundwater and pollute it. The result? Towns downhill from the mine have to purify their water to make it drinkable.
Vous savez, quand je parle de l'eau, moi je dis tout le temps, comme on n'aura plus d'eau potable, et que c'est pas la peine de se dire, mais on pourra la purifier, et puis on aura de... Non, parce que chaque fois qu'on la purifie, on pollue encore davantage. Donc un beau jour, on aura des matelas de dollars, et puis on mourra parce qu'on n'aura pas d'eau potable.
Another threat to this precious water, the furnaces where charcoal is made. The charcoal is used as fuel to transform the iron extract into steel. To fuel the furnaces, a tree has been imported from another continent, a tree which grows very quickly, the eucalyptus. 150,000 hectares of native forest were chopped down so they could be planted.
Tudo isso que nós estamos vendo aqui são as árvores de eucalipto. Uma floresta inteira sem biodiversidade. Uma floresta inteira que está sugando toda a água do solo, empobrecendo toda essa região. A única coisa que existe é uma floresta sem vida e que foi feita para gerar lucro para a empresa.
Beneath the eucalyptus forests, the ground has become impermeable. The result? Water runs off the surface and doesn't top up the groundwater. After 20 years of exploitation, this means desertification. The industrialists don't care. They set up here because rain is abundant. The trees grow quickly. The operation is very profitable for the owners of these enormous plantations.
Ils ont été plantés pour une mission, c'est-à-dire d'être coupés à l'âge de 5 ans, brûlés, faire du charbon de bois. Et pourquoi faire? On ne répond plus à nos besoins. On répond aux besoins de l'appât du gain maintenant. Et il faut absolument que l'homme reprenne raison.
The eucalyptus also cause obstruction in the water flow. Their roots are very shallow and can't retain the soil, which ends up in torrents. The current carries this red earth, which bit by bit blocks the rivers. There have been similar devastating consequences due to the country's other mining business, the extraction of precious stones. This land, rich in iron, is also rich in gold and diamonds. So everyone is looking for a find. By digging into the mountain, the miners have caused the death of the streams. Earth hurtles down the slopes and ends up in the rivers.
Isso é a origem do garimpo. Ele entupiu o poço. Aqui é 2, 3 metros de fundura aqui, ó. Olha lá, a fundura que tá aqui. Vê isso aqui, ó, erosão, ó. Entupindo as aras. Os criadores, aonde os peixes moravam, ali os peixes morreram. Acabou.
The fish do not have enough water to breed. José Antonio can no longer manage to support his family by fishing.
Aí, ó, pode ficar aí, ó. Fica o dia inteiro aqui, ó. Mas nada apanha. Porque é de que não tem. É o garimpo. O que fez isso? O garimpo. O garimpo para ouro e diamante. Acabou o peixe do rio.
Like everyone around here, he was a gold digger in his youth, but he didn't find his fortune. Since becoming a farmer, José Antonio has become aware of the damage he caused to his environment.
Hoje em dia, não faço isso. Destruir as margens de rio, os córregos, as cabeceiras de água é o que nós necessitamos. Se nós acabar com a nossa água, o que nós estamos fazendo? Nós estamos acabando com o nosso próprio, si mesmo. Então vamos ajudar. Nós precisamos ajudar, agir.
The classification as a biosphere reserve obtained by Daniel Mitterrand was a first step in the protection of Brazil's water tower, but it hasn't stopped the most polluting mining businesses. So to safeguard these most precious waters, such as this waterfall and the springs which feed into it, more restrictive zones of protections are needed by creating national parks. But a park means rules which need to be accepted by the inhabitants of the Minas Gerais. Zé and his wife have always lived here on a few plantations and a bit of breeding. In order to protect the vegetation and the water, the creation of a park forbids bringing cows to graze on the mountain. A decision they have accepted because their life depends on the springs.
Que corre aqui dentro lá, onde é o mato lá, só se for do céu para ter água mais boa que ela. Toda hora que você passar lá, qualquer tempo ela está fitadinha aqui. Uma beleza, olha a água boa.
Se acabar a água...
Acabou tudo. Tem mais lindo que tem a água que Deus deu a gente, não é? Ela é pra tudo.
A real treasure. Daniel Mitterrand would like the right to water to be part of the constitution, a battle her husband, the former French president, would have supported.
Vous savez, François, il me dirait, comme il me dit, t'as causé juste. Chaque fois qu'il y avait un différend entre la politique officielle et mes initiatives, jamais il ne m'a freiné ou interdit quoi que ce soit. Il m'a dit, si t'as causé juste, défends-la. Évidemment, ça ne nous aide pas beaucoup, mais t'as causé juste. Et je crois que celle-là, elle est juste.
Through her intervention, Daniel Mitterrand has given more weight to the local ecologists to mobilize the reserve's population. Everyone has the same objective: getting the industrialists to take measures to preserve the water indispensable to life in the region.
This kind of initiative will help attain the UN goal: decrease by half the number of people who don't have access to drinking water by 2015. We are flying over the Judea desert. Here is the spectacular fortress of Masada in Israel. In the year 73 AD, a rebellious 1,000 Jews preferred to kill themselves instead of surrendering to the Roman army. For the assault, the Romans constructed a ramp, which you can still see at the foot of the fortress. Built into the cliff, here is the Christian monastery of Mar Saba, founded in the 5th century. Not far away, the mosque of Nabi Musa, which housed the grave of Moses. On this land mingle 3 great religions. This is the place where you really notice that they all have the same origin. I'm standing at Old Gesher, a border between Israel and Jordan. Gideon Bromberg is Israeli. He belongs to a group, a gathering of Israelis, Palestinians and Jordanians under the association Friends of the Earth. Their idea, encouraging 3 countries to work together for sustainable development and that way building a stronger future for peace.
ידידי כדור הארץ זה ארגון יוצא דופן, זה ארגון ישראלי, ירדני, פלסטיני משותף שמתעסק בנושא המים החוצה גבולות. אנחנו מנסים לקדם חינוך בנושא מים, אנחנו מנסים להשפיע על מקבלי החלטות בנושא מים, אנחנו מנסים להציל חלק מהמשאבים הכי חשובים באזור שלנו, שיש להם משמעות לא רק לאזור, אבל לעולם כולו, נהר הירדן, ים המלח.
With all the troubles there are in these countries, and it is a land in conflict, do the children discuss it with their parents? Do the children tell you what their parents think?
הילדים שמשתתפים בפעילות השונה, הם מתחילים להכיר את השכן שלהם בעצם בצורה הטבעית ביותר, דרך המים המשותף ביניהם. הם בונים דברים יחד, הם לומדים יחד, הם יושנים יחד.
Have you noticed any change? Do Palestinians, Jordanians and Israelis understand that they have to work together? Can you sense something?
כאן הרבה שיתוף פעולה סביב מים. לכל אורך האינתיפאדה, כאשר בכל נושא אחר נפסק השיתוף פעולה, בנושא המים המשיכו, הממשלות לכל אורך האינתיפאדה המשיכו לדבר, בגלל שהם יודעים, הם מבינים שאנחנו תלויים אחד בשני כאשר אנחנו מדברים על מים.
In respecting water, you find peace.
זאת הדרך בהחלט לעשות שלום בין העמים וגם לכבד את הטבע המשותף בין כולנו.
I want to believe in the hope of peace sown by these children who don't know hatred yet. And this is what I'm thinking about when I land in Jerusalem. This city should be an example of coexistence in the world, but what's happening here is the total opposite. If I've chosen this area for this documentary, it's because the tensions are so enormous. And I hope that the lack of water will bring them together. It won't be the first time that man unites on common ground. Flying over this city, I feel moved. Even if this wall is a wall of shame for some and a wall of safety for others, it is still devastating for a 3,000-year-old town. What is amazing from above, and which is a form of continuation of the wall, is the Wailing Wall, which is sacred to the Jews from around the world, and not 2 steps away from the esplanade, the mosques, which are important to all Muslims, and right in front of the Church of St. Sepulchre, the meeting place for Christians. Seen from above, everything gets mixed up. And it's obvious to me, whether Christian, Jew or Muslim, or nothing at all, there is one thing common to us all: water. But water will probably force human beings here in the Middle East to make peace, assuring their survival. It's the only hope I believe in, here in Jerusalem, for water and for all of us. Good evening.
Bonsoir.
I want to thank all these people who have shown me how precious water is. I would like to thank Ricardo Petrella, a militant for the universal right to water. Thanks to Dave Tilford, who is fighting against the Las Vegas pipeline. I'd like to thank Amadou Sagara. Thanks to him, the sharing of water amongst the Dogons has remained stable. Thanks to Khalil Metek, water is a gift that we cannot waste. Thanks to Julie Trottier, who is fighting against the extinction of the Dead Sea. Thanks to Christine Jean and her friends who have fought for the Loire River. Thanks to Elaine Soloway, who is experimenting in desert agriculture. Thanks to Lior Asaf and Abu Mazen, protecting water goes beyond international borders. Thanks to Younes Moguer, who denounced the pollution in Gaza. Thanks to Danielle Mitterrand, who is fighting for water as a human right. Thanks to Guidon Gromberg and the Friends of the Earth Association, who is trying to make peace via water protection. As before, this documentary is carbon balanced. What does it mean? To make this documentary, between helicopter trips and flights, we've wasted approximately 121 tons of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which adds to the global warming factor. It roughly represents what 15 French people produce every year. We've decided to balance this pollution by participating in the Carbon Action Project in association with ADEME. It sends direct aid to a French NGO, Chenducour, who's working in the Santa Marta's, Sierra Nevada, Colombia. In these mountains live the Koji Indians. For the last 30 years, 78% of these lands have lost forests due to agriculture and breeding. The association finances the buying of deforested lands from the farmers and returns the land to the Koji Indians, who are in charge of replanting the forest. These new forests will contribute in regenerating the soil and recreate the flora and fauna. And finally, they will absorb thousands of tons of carbon dioxide and will contribute to the great fight against global warming. For us, it really counts.